Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Innovation Showcase. The main purpose of this ongoing series is to inform viewers about exciting innovations and creative individuals across the fields of business, science, technology, education, and the arts. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest Renee Blacken from Bethlehem, New Hampshire. Recently, Renee completed a solo row across the Atlantic Ocean, traveling more than 3,000 miles over 65 days as part of the Atlantic Dash, one of the world's most demanding endurance challenges. Alone at sea, she faced the physical strain of rowing for hours each day, the unpredictability of the ocean, and the mental challenge of complete isolation. But this journey was about more than distance. It was driven by purpose as Renee raised awareness and support for her nonprofit Outdoor Adventuring for Good, a trauma recovering program in northern New Hampshire. During the program, we'll be finding out why and how this incredible undertaking came about. And in the process, we'll come to better understand and appreciate what it took to prepare, what Renee experienced out on the open ocean, and how this remarkable journey is shaping what comes next for outdoor adventuring for good. Let's start by meeting Renee and then hearing all about her incredible achievement. Welcome, Renee. So delighted you're able to be here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity.
And first of all, just congratulations on the amazing achievement. Just unbelievable. So eager to hear more about it and have you inform viewers. But before we jump right to that, I think it would be of interest if you'd share perhaps just a little about your background, perhaps professional or other interests.
Sure, yeah. So I live in northern New Hampshire. I've lived here for just about the last 13 years. I moved here to teach high school. So I taught high school for 5 years, primarily in the sciences, chemistry, physics, environmental science, but a few other things as needed. And then I worked on a farm. I was the animal manager on a farm here, worked closely with goats and made goat cheese.
Mhm.
And I currently work at Lahoots, the oldest ski shop in America. And I am a mama. I have a 14-year-old son who is just wonderful.
Mhm.
And yeah, I've always been an adventurer. I enjoy being outdoors. I've done a bunch of endurance things over my time, hiking, cycling, but backpacking. But adding the ocean this time, for this length of time,
Yeah.
was really the new element for me. So a new frontier.
What was the inspiration for the solo Atlantic crossing?
Yeah, so it was a time in my life where it sort of resurfaced. I had heard about ocean rowing probably 8 years ago or so. I had read a book by a woman, Roz Savage, who had solo rowed the Atlantic. Um, and at that time I was like, that's a great story. Super inspirational, but it wasn't really, I didn't really have the bandwidth at that time to even consider like, oh, would I ever do that? It was like,
Mm.
it was a good book to read. But then years later, I was getting more interested in rowing again. I had rowed in high school and college, and had just come across a short documentary about this woman, Roz Savage, and I was like, "Oh, I know this story." So I started being like, "Ocean rowing, what's this?" And pretty quickly came across the Atlantic Dash, which is an organized rowing event that I ultimately ended up rowing with. And it really just resonated with me. I was at a point in my life where I had been dealing with significant like mental and physical health issues, had reached a point where I had found some support resources, had
Mm.
found some ultimately trauma recovery programs, which I realized a lot of my mental and physical health issues stemmed from, that had helped me regain some agency on my own journey. And realized that maybe it was like this big adventure was the
Mm.
thing um, to help me move forward through some of that stuff. But it very quickly became bigger than me. So once I found the Atlantic Dash, I pretty much knew that immediately that I was going to do it and signed up
Mhm.
very quickly, because
Great.
then you have to do it. um, that I was going to do it solo, because it was part of my own personal journey through moving some of my own trauma, learning to trust myself to be able to figure things out in that type of environment. And that I knew I was going to row to support trauma recovery programs, because what I had access to in my life that could even get me to the point where I could say, I think I could row across the Atlantic. I realized that we do not have enough of those resources in the northern part of the state where I live.
Mm.
We have such a need. So many of the issues that we face in the northern part of this state stem from unresolved trauma, and the resources aren't available, and we can talk about it and we can tell people that they need to ask for help all day long, but if help isn't there, they're going to stop asking. So it was the right time in my life, that I knew that this is what I was going to do, and I knew that I was going to row to support trauma recovery.
Terrific, terrific. You mentioned you've had some involvement with ultra distance races and things, but how did you go about preparing for something this extreme?
um yeah, so I think like the biggest thing was just taking the step and saying I was going to do it, because
Mm.
then you force yourself to do that preparation. So it was about 2 years of
Wow.
preparation and building a campaign before
Mm.
I got to the starting line of the Atlantic Dash. um and so the preparation was like multi-pronged. Obviously, there's physical training that needs to go into that. And that was sort of the more like, yeah, day to day, I could kind of keep up with that. It was kind of the natural flow. I would go to the gym, do CrossFit, those kinds of things. And then I had some more intense, intentional training trips with my boat as well. Once I got the boat. But then, yeah, there was getting the boat. So
Yeah.
that was a big part of the preparation, was finding and securing a boat. And then a lot securing all the equipment that you need, learning how to use all the equipment. I had to take a bunch of courses, VHF radio, navigation, marine first aid, sea safety, those types of things, to be able to be qualified to go to participate in this event. Um, yeah, and it was like just a lot of logistics, a lot of problem solving, figuring things out. Kind of the hub of ocean rowing has really been over in England, Europe.
Mm.
And so I'm doing it from the mountains of trying to build a campaign from the
Yeah.
mountains of New Hampshire. So there was a lot of sort of learning as I go, helping the event also, and like understand what it is to build a campaign over here from the US. But it was a great learning opportunity. And I think, because of all the challenges and kind of things that I had to figure out in those 2 years, like that served me out on the water to be like, okay, I can solve problems. Like I have overcome all of these things, figured them all out. Like I got in the boat, we are rowing the ocean. Like, so when things came up out there, I was like, okay, like, no, you can figure this out.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it was a solo row, but beforehand and throughout, and even now afterwards, have you had others involved with your effort?
Absolutely, massively. Yeah, I mean, and that is what I've always said throughout my life is like, and especially here, it's like, yeah, I'm the one in the boat that has to get up every day, put my hands on the oars and do the work to get across that ocean. But I absolutely did not do it alone. Sometimes people will call these rows unsupported because there's no one handing you snacks. You don't get a
Mm.
resupply. Everything you take is self-contained on that boat. But I categorically don't use that word because, I mean, to me, like that's the whole point. The reason that I could say to you, I'm going to row across the Atlantic Ocean, the reason I could build that entire campaign, the reason I could get in that boat in Lanzarote, and certainly what got me across was just a massive network of support, from friends, family, the Atlantic Dash,
Mhm.
huge, you know, people reaching out to me from all times and spaces and places of my life. Um, High school friends from 25 years ago, their
Ah,
parents, college roommates, from other places in my life that I've lived. I lived in North Carolina for a long time. Everybody here in New Hampshire, folks from the yoga
mm.
studio where I teach. It really just, I mean, in I use the word overwhelming, but like in the best way possible. The support that was absolutely what allowed me to take this on and to be successful with it. Absolutely.
Well, I think it also speaks not to yourself, but to the importance of the cause that you were rowing for from now going forward as well. You mentioned the boat a bit. Could you just share some of the features of the type of boat you used for this achievement?
Yeah, so the boat that I used, this was its second crossing, so it had done one crossing
Ah,
previously. It was built in 2023 in Poland. It's made out of marine plywood with a GRP finish on it. Um, and it's a little bit it's got like a long keel design, so it kind of sits in the water. It's very stable, and that's what I found rowing it across. Is it was the stability was excellent.
wow.
She took very good care of me. She took some big hits out there and kept me safe. But yeah, it's kind of got like a little boxy design. That's There's like a class of boats called Woodvale boats that were kind of the classic rowing boats that were first being built. And so it's got kind of that look to it. But yeah, just a really, really well built craft. It's about 6 meters long, so just shy of 20 feet. Has one rowing station, enclosed stern and bow cabins. The stern cabin is where I stayed, and that's where all of like the instrumentation was. Equipped with solar panels, battery storage to run things like a chart plotter, deck repeater, VHF radio, all that equipment there, and then other devices that I would be able to plug into the main there to be able to use out there.
You mentioned nobody was nearby handing out snacks. What went into the planning and just a little overview of the supplies you ended up taking with you?
Yeah, so the Atlantic Dash, because I was going solo, they required that I take 90 days worth of provisions. So, which at about 4,500 calories a day.
Mm.
So I ended up having to figure out how to pack over 400,000 calories into this boat.
Wow.
So it was a lot of freeze dried food, backpacking type meals. And yeah, so I was able to have a couple of companies help me out with that. Good to Go. They helped me, which is a company out of Maine. They helped me out with some of their meals. And then Grandy Organics, another company out of Maine, they provided a lot of granola and trail mix type stuff as part of my fueling.
Mm.
Then I worked with a woman in Vermont to do some like homemade meals to freeze dry as well.
Mm.
So yeah, I took 18 jars of peanut butter. I only ate nine. I did about
Wow.
one jar a week. But yeah, and kind of try to mix things up a bit. But yeah, I kind of had to figure out how to have the snacks, the easy stuff that I could just kind of eat and row and eat and row. And then sort of those meals that had more of like the complete nutrition in them, that I would have one or two of every day. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. I know it might not be easy to summarize as typical, but what would maybe sort of somewhat typical day look like out in the ocean once you got going?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it depended a lot on like the conditions, but generally speaking, it was it was a lot of rowing. Um, so I rowed for about 12 hours a day, on
Wow.
average.
Incredible.
Some days I rowed more, like up to 15 hours.
Oh,
And towards
wow.
the end, when it got really hot, I had to scale back, and was rowing more like 10 and a half, 11 hours a day because the heat was starting to make me feel not very good. Um, but yeah, it would be rowing and resting and just kind of taking shifts on and shifts off. I was doing at the beginning like bigger chunks where I would be on the oars for 3, 4, 5 hours at a time. Obviously taking breaks to have a snack or a drink or something, but I'd be out, rowing for up to like 5 or 6 hours in one chunk. During the day, I found that I did not like rowing in the middle of the night. It
Mm.
just didn't work with my body rhythm. Like, I feel like I realized that pretty early on. So some folks will do like, especially in larger crews, they'll do 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 2 hours on, 2 hours off. Like,
Yeah.
but as a solo, I could really adapt to what I needed and what the conditions were giving me. So if I needed to kind of like lay down for 20 minutes, I could, and then, get back out there. But then, yeah, I kind of, as it got hotter, I had to adapt. I couldn't do those big chunks of rowing anymore. So I was doing like 2 hours on, 1 hour off. And then towards the end, I had to do 1 hour on, a half an hour off during the day. And then I was trying to row a little bit more into the night because it was cooler. But yeah, then your breaks just kind of look like resting, as much as you can. You got to get your food in your body. You've got to get the salt off your body. So at the end of the shift,
Mm.
we had baby wipes that, you take and wipe everything, all the salt off you, because the salt, if it stays on there, it can be really abrasive, and you can get
Mm.
things like saltwater sores. And so like you really want to stay out ahead of that. And then it was like, if there's anything that needed to be done on the boat, whether it's like, some bucket laundry that needs to you got a few things that need to be washed and hung out, or, I was always listening to the sounds of the boat and like to make sure that everything was running properly. But especially towards the end, I ended up having to deal with my seat wheel bearings a bunch. And so being able to have the time to fix those things and just kind of do a little boat maintenance during that rest time. So yeah, like during the day, that downtime wasn't very much sleeping. So it was pretty much like eating, cleaning, and you might get to, lay down for 15 minutes. But then I would try to take a longer chunk in the middle of the night where I would get, 3, 4, maybe 5 lucky hours of sleep, but
Wow.
not really. Because then you're always still sitting up to check your chart plotter and things like that. And then also every day we would have a call with the Atlantic Dash. So we had a daily
Ah.
check-in call for, safety. We would get a weather routing update from them daily as well. But yeah, the call was sort of just designed like safety, medical, anything that's come up with you or the boat, just generally like, what's it like out there? What cool stuff have you seen or done? So yeah, that happened
Nice.
every day as well.
Were there moments when you questioned whether you might continue, or was that hourly, daily, or how?
There were, yes, I would say there were definitely moments when I was like, what am I doing? What have I done? Yeah, but it was never a question of not continuing. And I think that is why I put myself in this environment. That is why I chose to do this event, because once you begin, you have to keep going. Like, barring catastrophic injury to yourself or your boat, like, you have to keep going. Like, to get you out of that situation is a massive effort, right? Like, and so you just don't even consider it. I mean, you're like, well, maybe you consider it, but
Or
it's
at
not
least
it's just
keep.
not something that you would set into motion. So really, and I knew that, like, even on the days where I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is too much, right? And there were moments where I was like, where it felt like that, but then knowing that you could do it, right? Like, that those moments passed. The days were kind of, yeah, just these like roller coasters of, working through those emotions of like, this is too big, what if I can't, instead of letting that take over, it was reframing and saying, well, what if I can? You know what? Like, I'm out here. What if I can do this? Like, how about we operate from that place instead? And so ultimately, yeah, it was kind of, you know, meeting my mind every day, to commit to this thing that I knew intellectually I could do. Like, I wouldn't have built a 2-year campaign and like gotten into the boat if I didn't actually think I could row across the ocean. But then moment to moment, it was really this kind of mind body continuum of being like, well, like, that's what we're doing right now. And so we're going to figure it out. If it's hard, if your hands are torn up, if you're lonely, like, what do you need to do in this moment to take care of yourself so you can keep going?
Mhm. At least keep going until you've eaten all the peanut butter or something like that.
Yeah.
You, you mentioned keeping in touch with Atlantic Dash, and talking to them, sharing what was fascinating or cool from day to day.
Mhm.
Just looking back, what are a couple of quick things that stand out most when you look back that you'll savor and just incredible memories?
Yeah, so I think one of them was actually sort of framed as one of the scarier things that I had to kind of face out there. But now that I have faced it, I like feel a little transformed. So it was the first time I had to jump in the ocean and clean the bottom of my boat. So
Mm.
as you're rowing, barnacles will attach themselves to the bottom of your boat and they'll create drag. So they'll slow the boat down. And let me tell you, if there is anything you can do to make that boat go faster out there, like you're going to do it. So, and I knew that I was going to have to do it. Like it's part of ocean rowing that you got to jump in, clean your boat. But I was alone, right? And so that day where I was like, well, today's hull clean day, like my anxiety was really really high. Um, and I never, like I said, I never felt unsafe on the boat. Like even when the waves were crashing in and all that, like I was okay. It was the idea of getting off the boat and into the water and under the water that really, really terrified me. And so I talked to our safety officer. I talked to our event director, back and forth that morning, got, some words of wisdom from them about how to proceed. Uh, and then it finally just came down to it. Obviously, you've got your safety harness on, you're tied into the boat, you have your personal location beacon on you. So it's like, it's all there. And then, yeah, just that feeling of like slipping over the side of the boat, like into the ocean. And you're
Wow.
like, I'm doing it. And like, I remember I was like, I put my GoPro camera on because I was like, if I am going in, there will be a record of this. And yeah, and then you just do it. Like you realize you're in the water and you're doing it, and I'm cleaning the bottom and I'm scraping the hull and like working my way all the way around, holding onto the grab line as I go under the boat. And I'm like, okay, like this is systematic. Like you just one step at a time and you get it done. And then like heaving back into the boat, and I realized like I did it. I'm like, and then I was like, I could probably do that again. Okay. And it was this sense of like something that I had been so frightened of because it was the unknown, because I'd never done it before. It was kind of literally plunging into the depths of the ocean. um but then once you do it and you break it down and you just like you realize like I was capable of doing that. And then I did do it two more times, and by the third time, like I didn't even like report out on it. I was like, oh right, I forgot to tell people that I cleaned the whole like because it was just like, okay, it's time to do the thing. And I think that is something I can carry forward very much, in terms of just realizing like, one, like, well, it's okay to be a little bit afraid of things that we don't know and understand, but you don't need to get so like tied into knots about it. Break it down. What's that going to look like? What's the first step? Like, and moving on from there. Yeah, and it did feel like I was an ocean rower. Like I had done the thing, that was like a rite of passage almost. So that was a pretty cool experience. And then I'll just say one other, I mean, there were so many, but one other thing that was really unique and stood out was, I think it was day 49, when I was visited by the Queen Victoria, which is
Wow.
a cruise ship. And throughout the whole crossing, there were ships would be passing by, especially when you're closer to either of the islands, and they'd show up on my deck, or on my deck repeater, but on my chart plotter, because we had AIS, so you could see other boats in the vicinity, and if they got within a certain radius, an alarm would go off, and you're like, okay, time to check in with them, make sure they see me. So yeah, it was sort of a matter of course. You'd get on the VHF radio, you'd call up the boat and say, just want to make sure you see me. Great. Okay. Have a good day. So I called up the Queen Victoria, did the standard sort of procedure there. And then they
Ah.
called me back. And they were like, you're rowing? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, in a crew? And I was like, no, I'm going alone. And they were like,
Wow.
oh. And then they asked me a bunch of questions. They asked me where I started from, when I started, where I was going, when I hoped to land, what charity I was rowing for, what my Instagram was, and everything. And they said, well, here's what we're going to do. we're going to divert our course and we're going to do a drive-by at a safe distance. We're going to sound all our horns and whistles for you.
Oh,
We're going to tell
fabulous.
the passengers to come up on the deck.
Oh,
And they did, and they made an announcement from the bridge of the ship to all of the passengers. They were, they gave them the Outdoor Adventuring for Good, the name of the charity, my Instagram. They were like, it's Renee Rose the Atlantic, and that's Renee with two E's. And I was like, they really went out of their way
yeah.
to like, yeah, make me feel like I was seen and welcomed by them. And they put out the American flag when they went by. It was pretty special.
Definitely.
And it
Definitely.
was just wild too to see their videos like posted on social media after the fact, because it gave me the perspective of what I looked like to the big ship. And
Mm.
I was like, I am tiny. I was like this little cork like bobbing along in the ocean. um, on that, that 6 meter platform that was my whole world, right? So
Yeah. Oh, what a
um,
fabulous
yeah, it was like
experience.
a moment of human connection pretty far into the journey. And I still had a good deal left to do. So it was, yeah, that was like a good spirit building moment. Yeah.
Well, coming to the end of your journey, what did it feel like to finally arrive and see people again after being alone for so long?
Yeah, so I'll back up. Before the people, I saw the land. And that was a wild moment.
Mm.
Because when you're rowing, you're facing where you've been. You're not facing where you're going, right? So I wasn't constantly scanning the horizon for like, oh my gosh, this is now when's the moment going to be that I see land? Because you're facing the other direction. But it was when I had gone into my cabin for one of my 30-minute little breaks during the day, and then I opened the stern cabin door and I looked out, and like you could see this like lumpy hazy shape on the horizon. I was like, oh my god, that is land.
Wow.
Like
Oh,
unmistakably
wow.
land. And so that feeling was like, I've done it. Like I've literally crossed an entire ocean alone in this wooden boat. I wasn't there yet. Like I still had about 25 miles to get to the island and then 15 to go around the backside. But like, it was that feeling of like, all right, like this is possible, which is like wild. Like nearly 3,000 miles later, my brain was still like, is this possible, Renee? But that's my brain. And then, yeah, like seeing people again for the first time. When I got close to the island, the event director came out with an Absar boat from the marina, and they met me to kind of go with me to the port there, and like seeing them for the first time, and like who people I hadn't seen for over 2 months, um, and then it was sort of like by stages. Then the marina crew came out and met me, and then coming into the marina, and then it was like everybody was on the dock. My son was
Mm.
there. A couple of my dear friends were there. A bunch of the rowers who had come in but before me, other rowers in the Atlantic Dash, had stayed to welcome
Ah.
me in.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, it was. I mean, it was like this sense of overwhelm, but also this sense of gratitude, absolute gratitude, for everybody that was there to welcome me in. Obviously, like seeing my son was the most amazing experience. He was right there at the side of the boat, first person, to help me off the boat and give me a big hug. And yeah, but it was like reacclimating, and I'm still reacclimating
Yeah, I
to
bet. I bet.
to people. Just yeah, it is interesting. It's not like I was completely cut off, like I had communication, but just not face to face and not in big
Sure.
groups. And
Quite
there was
different.
so much time just alone in my own head. But it's good. I mean, it's good to be back and to be, doing, getting involved again, and networking and building things here with folks. So yeah.
Well, we're most grateful that you took the time to share your experience, the adventure with us, because unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. In our closing credits, we'll have some additional information people can find out about outdoor adventuring for good. Perhaps visit your Instagram, see some wonderful video clips. of events that you've shared with us and others. But for now, Renee, just want to say thank you so much again and continued success with your future endeavors.
Thank you so much.
Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.